Excellent. Wonderful. So welcome everyone to our second webinar from this four-part series where we have been sharing information about a topic that is very dear and close to the heart of all of us, working family caregivers. And we're very happy to have all of you here on our second series. And we have an international audience that we're very excited to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. And so we, as the first one, we will make it very informal. So please share your comment, your question on the chat, because Scott is going to be moderated. So we will make your questions available as we move along. But today we want to talk about the diversity of family caregivers. Really, everyone, some way or another, it is a family caregiver in some point of their life. And I'm going to start just giving you some statistics because we want to talk today about the racial impact, the age impact, and the social impact. We have that in 2023, I'm going to just read some statistics that I was finding. 11.5% of the population, an equivalent of 38 millions, are family caregivers. They are caring for a loved one. 58% are women, but the role of male caregiver is very important, and we're going to listen that during the panel today. 19% of the family caregivers are 65 years and older, and 37% are caring for a parent or an in-law. So the statistics are significant, and that's the objective of this panel today, how we can identify the working family caregivers, their challenge, and in particularly today, we want to talk about their diversity. So we're going to start talking today, taking a time for members of our panel to share with us their own experiences in their individual roles of family caregivers. And I would like to invite Christy to start with the discussion about her experience and what she has learned as a sandwich generation caregiver.
Sure. Thank you, Paula. I'm not sure if you spoke specifically to the size of the sandwich generation, but it's roughly about the Pew Research Center estimates about 23%. I'd say it's a lot higher than that, but that's and a sandwich generation person is someone who has children under the age of 18 in their home, and they're caring for an aging or ailing person older than themselves, or it could be a spouse, could be a parent, could be a grandparent. So it's really about being squeezed between two generations, right? And you're kind of there in the middle. And many people in the sandwich also have to contribute financially to their parents' well-being. That's something that is that happens a lot. So I actually am still sort of in the sandwich. I don't have anybody under the age of 18 in my home anymore. My children are young adults, but my in-laws are in their 80s, and we're more long distance. My sisters-in-law live nearby, and they do a lot of the management of care. But back in the early 2010s, I was your classic sandwich generation mom. I had kids who were late elementary school, early middle school, and I have two kids. And then as they grew up, as they just kept doing, they just kept growing up. And next thing you know, they're in high school. And I had two parents. I was managing their care, and they both had some form of dementia. So it was and I was working full time. The I think I had the best of all possible scenarios in that my husband worked from home, so he could pick up a lot of uh, stuff with the kids at times, drop off and pick up. And he had a great relationship with my parents. So, it was good, but it was tough. And I think that's what we find in the sandwich generation is that you're really kind of squeezed between two different things. And I come to this also in my work now. I was a school psychologist for 20 years, and I can tell you that what happens at home comes to school. It impacts children because they're seeing all that's going on. They're grieving when you're grieving, and we're grieving before our person passes away. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it can impact children a lot. So it's what I work to do now is to kind of help people understand really the dynamic of what's going on. How can you understand that, and then how can you do things to support your children and your parents? But it's a big squeeze. So that's what the sandwich generation part is.
Now you say something very important, Christy, that indirectly your children becomes caregiver as well. And it's a topic that we don't talk too much, but the youth caregiver
Yeah.
is around 5 million
Yes.
that
Yes.
that are paying direct care for
Right.
someone,
Yeah.
which is significant. And we have to also pay attention to them. But then we have the indirect caregivers like your children.
Right, right, absolutely. And I want to say one other thing real quickly. You know, this is very much the sandwich generation thing is very much a product of many Western civilizations. A lot of communities, I live in a very diverse community. So in my neighborhood, we have many multi-generational families who come from other cultures than, the typical American family who might not live next door to their parents anymore, but in my neighborhood, lots of people have their grandparents living with them, and that's just the way it is, right? And so there's something to be said about that we've kind of moved away from that village mentality in many ways, where kids are part of, they're receiving care from their grandparent as youth, and then they're then caring for them later. But absolutely, there are also a lot of children who are giving care to children, and that could be a whole episode that we talk about, but we're not going to do that today. I just wanted to share a little bit about the
That is
sandwich
true.
generation.
No, absolutely. Very, very important topics. I mean, and it's true. It's a topic for another session. But it's interesting that you mentioned the evolution of the Western societies that is affecting the way of life all over the world, even in Asia right now, the same thing, right? So very, very interesting topic about that specific aspect of the diversity of caregivers. Now, Consuela, please share with you. I know you have a lot of to share through your own work with the families and your own experience as a family caregiver. So please share with us this other aspect of the diversity of caregivers.
Yes, thank you. As a occupational therapist, I have worked in the home setting for 25 years. That means I brought my services into the homes where the caregiving, I could see it close up front and really looking at the diversities of caregiving. So I really appreciate that this topic of working caregivers and that need to support them being more in the forefront, because we didn't hear about this a lot in the past. So I'm excited that caregivers, I mean, that companies are trying to embrace this concept and seeing how important it is, because it's weaved into the fabric of your company, whether you know it or not. And it one thing that I have noticed in my line of work is the diversity of the caregivers. So as you're embracing this concept and really wanting to go on board, the hope in the white paper and in all of what we're doing here is that you not get your definition of caregiving so narrow that it is not going to it is not going to be advantageous for your whole community of employers. And I saw firsthand often the different types of caregivers. So in the therapist arriving on the scene, and mom or dad has just had a stroke, they're trying to recover from a hip replacement, a back surgery. The caregivers that I see can become that they are diverse. So having the concept that the caregivers are going to look different is important in how you go about setting up structures and putting things in place. I often see the caregiver who is the direct caregiver. They are there full time. They've left the job and it wasn't an option for them, and they have certain needs. But then oftentimes, when I'm in a home, I'm also seeing the caregiver who is concerned about their loved one, but they are also concerned about their job. They're the one that they're the one that walks me to my car and say, hey, how long do you think it's going to take before mom can walk again, or she can be left at home again, because they have concerns about going back to work. And I also see caregivers that come fly in. They're only there for a short time to be that additional support to the one who's the primary caregiver. And they have their whole, list of responsibilities that they are responsible for. So I just really want to drive home the fact that caregivers are gonna look different. The diverse responsibilities of caregivers are gonna require certain accommodations, certain ways to meet those particular needs, and that there is a need to really learn as a whole how to listen to caregivers and really be able to see what their particular needs are. And if you know of employees who may have loved ones in assisted living or nursing home, long-term care facilities, it doesn't mean like, oh, they don't need my help, someone else is caring for them. Caregiving responsibilities don't end because your loved one is now in assisted living or in a long-term care facility. The responsibilities are still there. It just comes wrapped up in a different package that you're not there doing hands-on with that loved one. But even in those settings, an employee who's caring for someone still has a load of responsibilities that come in their current situation. So my appeal is that as we're moving forward and HR people are listening, it's like keep the lens wide, keep the lens wide open, because your caregivers are gonna look different, and it's gonna cycle. That same one employee care needs may be different along the continuum of their caregiving journey based on what setting their loved one transitions into and what that level of care needs are for the one that they're caring for.
Thank you, Consuela. You addressed so many important topics that the transitions from home to an assisted living or any other setting, it doesn't free you completely from responsibilities and worries, because at the end of the day, you are the person responsible. If anything happened to that person in the facility, you are the first person that they're going to be contacting and requiring for you to fix whatever it is. And I think this is and again, we can go deeper into this topic, but I think it's a great segue to Zach, because you have your own experiences and your own situations as a family caregiver, a long distance caregiver. So Zach, please share with us. I mean, we know you as a dear friend, and we know the difficult things that you have experienced through your journey as a caregiver.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Paula, for bringing us all back together again, and Christopher for Whole Care Network helping us continue these webinars. These are so important to raise our awareness and have discussions. And I can already see from the chat room, people sharing, their caregiver experience, that everybody's different in some specific areas. Everyone is going to be similar, but in most areas, everybody's going to be different. And as Consuela said it so beautifully, we do need to widen our lenses. And I got bad news for HR managers who are trying to grasp this. It's going to constantly change. So those lenses may even have to be changed once in a while. And I'll just use myself as an example as a male caregiver. Just that landscape alone has changed significantly since I became a caregiver, which I was drafted involuntarily, with a 3-minute phone call from my brother in North Carolina, and I'm in New Jersey, telling me that my father just had a stroke, and I became an instant long-distance caregiver since 2007. I didn't call myself a caregiver then, but I certainly have realized the importance of identifying as a caregiver, and male caregiver in particular. And I will tell you, when I got that phone call, I had to tell my boss at the time, who was a new boss, that I need to leave on an emergency for family business. I didn't go into detail. Men just don't talk about it back then. Today, some men are still having a hard time sharing personal issues, at work. Though I will tell you, my son who has 3 children, who has done more caregiving at the age of 33 years old than I've done probably at 50 when it comes to children. He will share with me stories about his manager and their kids, who's a male, or peers who are males. So they are talking about it more and more at work, which I'm really encouraged to see. But in my situation, when I shared with my manager, I need to leave on a family emergency, you know what he said to me? And I don't blame him for this. I don't hate him for it, but he said, "Can't your wife go do it?" And at the moment, I didn't really think too hard about that. Later, as I reflected on it, I was just downright insulted. So, and listen, we all have biases, and that's what today is about: is to discuss different types of caregivers and different types of caregiving responsibilities and journeys, so that we can just have a little bit more understanding and awareness. Let me share just a few more facts about male caregivers. Again, why is it that male caregivers are looked at as, can't somebody else go do it? Or you're a tough guy, you'll be all right, you'll get through it. Why is that? Or why is it that most male caregivers or males are thought of not as caregivers? Well, males do tend to be more silent than women, even though many of us, the 53 million caregivers out there today, are in silent or invisible for many reasons, but males do tend to be more silent about it. Males are growing in the caregiver amount, just like believe Christy said, the younger caregivers are growing in numbers. So are male. Currently, there's about 40% of that 53 million are male caregivers. That comes out to about 21 million men. And I know, Christy, you're in California. That's half the population of California, which is the most populated state in the country. Or Sue, you're in Florida. It is actually the exact number of people that live in Florida. 21 million men are caregivers. And so that is significant. And more are younger. Between the ages of 18 and 49, 42% of them are male caregivers. So again, this is becoming more and more of a significant issue and challenge. And again, I never realized it as a male until I started interacting with female caregivers, and I just didn't know very many male support groups out there. And luckily, unfortunately, there are more and more, but you have to go find them. So I actually joined a large women's caregiver group. It's called the Working Daughters, and a shout out to Liz O'Donnell, who founded that. There's over 10,000 members on this private Facebook group, and I encourage everyone who's listening in to join that Facebook group, private Facebook group. But when I joined it, I actually was quiet for a while, but when I would start commenting, other members were either offended that there was a male caregiver here, or they became a little bit more empathetic and compassionate. And the reason why some of them were a little taken back is because many of the posts that are venting posts are complaining about their brothers who are not doing anything. And trust me, I have a brother, hopefully not listening right now, who doesn't do much. But what's encouraging about the opportunity to talk today is I just ask that we all stay open-minded, regardless of the gender, that a caregiver is a caregiver, and whatever they're going through at work or in their personal lives is important to each and every individual. Just a couple more things I want to share. I think I have maybe a couple more minutes. This is really powerful, and I can say I personally have experiences that men actually do change in quite some powerful ways after they've been in a caregiving role. Whether it's becoming more compassionate, more empathetic, a better manager of time and tasks, whether it's being more sensitive to the day-to-day, men definitely do change in very powerful ways. And I am a living example of that. I've gone from never talking to anybody about my caregiving experiences to now being very public about it and helping others with it. The only other thing I'd like to add here, again, we all as caregivers go through our caregiver journeys and do suffer, and I use the word suffer, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, and for different reasons. Women, it's a well-known fact that they are they are suffering quite significantly financially. I think I saw somewhere in the chat room that someone had to leave their job, or someone has to reduce the amount of time they're working, and that does impact women a lot. But men also, more male caregivers are salaried than women, and in ways that might be a benefit, so they can leave work, because then maybe they're not hourly and they have more benefits. But men typically tend to be in their roles because many times that they're caring for a spouse, but they tend to be in those roles for a longer periods of time, and that does take a financial impact on you. And now that we're seeing younger and younger men being caregivers, they haven't even had a chance to get their salaries up, or get their savings in a place where they can make a difference. And the statistic I'm looking for is right here: 44% of male caregivers have household incomes under $50,000 a year. So I appreciate the opportunity, Paula, here just to share some facts and personal experience from male caregivers, only so that we could continue to, as Consuela put it so well, keep our lenses broad as we're interacting with our peers, with our friends, with family members, that it doesn't really matter what gender you are. It's more important that you're a caregiver, and how you can be more supportive of them.
Thank you. Excellent statistics. I mean, so much to talk about the impact in the whole family. And we're doing this on purpose, this conversation, because we want to open the discussion and normalize that everyone, because it's not a matter of who handpick individuals in your organization are caregivers. It affects your whole organization. And if you don't bring that into the equation of how you manage your workforce, how you care for your workforce in order that they can be more productive, feel supported, more engaged, being actually feeling that they are part of your organization, we really want to open the discussion to everyone in all of those organizations. So when you go back to your day-to-day routine, look around and don't ask, are you a caregiver? Just start assuming that they are, because if they are not right now, they will be very soon. It's the reality of our societies, and we really want to bring it out there. And the statistic that we have been sharing with our panelists reflect the impact in the whole society, and that's what we are talking about it. So, Sue, please give us yet another perspective of caregiving. You have also a beautiful story. Please share that with us.
Oh, thank you. I've been in a variety of roles of family caregiving support over the past 40 years that included my grandmother, my dad, and overlapping my dad was my husband. And the whole time I was also working as a business professional and often traveling, never self-identifying at work because it wasn't accepted at the time. And when we talk about the hidden workforce, I experienced what that was and recognized that the additional challenges we had. And like Zach talked about, another hidden workforce is the dynamic of the male caregiver. So one of it is that we are there and we don't self-identify. And then it's also that they don't see men as that. And so the lenses that I have had are where we feel responsible for providing the best care for our loved ones and the team members we have and in the roles we have. And when we leave our home in the morning, we don't quit being a parent or a caregiver. When we are at work and we go home, we don't quit being a business professional. And so it's learning for us and for those of us at work and at home, how to intersect what those are. And now, as more and more businesses are learning how to embrace or become aware of the complexities of working caregivers, what they're learning is that the precedent for most of the solutions, depending on the size of the organization, very small companies haven't, but from about a mid-sized company on, they have already legally gone through for other special groups the financial, the legal, the communication, the processes to embrace different groups. So now what we have the opportunity to do is, since we can more easily start calling out, raising the awareness of the dynamic of the working family caregiver, solutions can be implemented very quickly. And so while we have this challenge right now, and it's going to be growing exponentially based on all the statistics people have said, what I believe is that we have, as the collective voice, the opportunity to really accelerate the impact we're making in the workforce to be able to support the working family caregivers so both thrive. When we're in our temporary season as a working family caregiver, the business understands it and we can talk about it with our team members, just like other temporary seasons we have in our lives that are being embraced. And so while I recognize the magnitude of the issue, what I also recognize is that more and more of us now are becoming this beautiful collective voice to come together and to make an impact. And I'm really excited to be a part of the energy and the positive path that we're making, not to be the victims of it, to be the voices of, here's the solution. Let's help invite you into the consideration of this solution and making it easier for them to step right into.
Oh, thank you so much, Sue, for bringing that, because it's all about not reinventing the wheel, but just using the vehicles that are already in place that you can adapt. Sometimes you have the delivery benefits for children. Why not to use that for a family caregiver? Or you may have transportation for bringing your children to school, or for doctor's appointment of your children. Let's try to use that for your elder parents and many other things that we can definitely use just by acknowledging that the reality of our workforce are family caregivers.
One of the things that I heard of recently that is very exciting to me is that with the voices collectively speaking more loudly, other organizations are looking at, how do we support this group? And I believe it's Uber is now having special ways to providing caregiving transportation. And there are other companies, meal companies, and things are making it easier when you're trying to order meals from a distance for your loved one, or different kinds of considerations for dietary needs. So it's a very exciting time. It's still challenging. There are opportunities for us, and yet we can be doing it from a place of hope and potential, leveraging our experiences for how to help them accelerate the solutions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that positive note. And as you see, the diversity of family caregivers is huge. And yet we have yet another segment of our population, which is the LGBTQ plus community, that they are a big part of family caregivers. And I would like to introduce our friend Chris to share his story. He really went through a lot of a beautiful experience, painful experience sometimes, but let's hear from Chris. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Well, greetings, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be here. And in my over 30 some odd years in some form of social work and a variety of roles, and the past 15 years as a LGBT caregiver and advocate, I've never come across one social issue like caregiving that brings a diverse group of people together, because caregiving is indiscriminate. It's in every boardroom, it's in every neighborhood. There's no boundaries when it comes to economy and gender orientation. People relate to caregivers because there's no strangers when it comes to caregiving. And it's through our story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. Today is a perfect example of that. We've got a variety of people here with vast caregiving experiences that we know each other somewhat, but we really know each other when we share our story. And that's where the resources come together. That's where trusted referrals happen, because one caregiver is not going to give another caregiver a bad referral. And I think really, from my perspective as an LGBT caregiver, I was often asked, well, what's different for LGBT caregivers? And I would say, well, there's really not too much. We all want to love and care for our care partner. I'll use the generic term. I was fortunate; I cared for somebody that I dearly loved. Uh, the issues are the same, isolation, medication management, fear, all those things. But for the LGBT caregiver, it is a little bit different. I'm not naive. I know that there are differences for LGBT caregivers, especially as it relates to third-party care. Are your doctors LGBT friendly? Are your home health care agencies LGBT friendly? Why does that matter? Well, especially when you think about where today's LGBT seniors, the environment that they came out of.
Yeah.
An untrusting environment when your three pillars of care, your family, your church, and your work environment didn't really support you, and you were afraid to access services or be who you are. That's a whole other layer of care that the LGBT community ends up dealing with. And that's why, I come back to the importance of sharing the story, because when we feel comfortable of sharing to like-minded people, then that broadens their perspective. One of the things that I've learned along the way is that, and I think Zach and both Consuela kind of talked about it, and I'll put it in a little bit more funny term. Men really need to step out of the closet and tell their caregiving story because it's cathartic. It's cathartic for the caregiver, and it's very cathartic for the person that you're telling it to. I was fortunate. When I was working, it was important for me to work for organizations that had a servant leadership philosophy to it, because I knew in one sense that my needs were going to be different. Our caregiving story happened before marriage equality became law. How do you go to a supervisor and say, my friend has cancer and I got to go home and take care of him? What do you mean your friend? You can't, your friend. And believe me, I had a number of people tell me, he's not your responsibility. You're not married to him. I said, well, sorry, he is my responsibility. He's my life partner. And that's why, a couple of the things here. We're talking a lot about statistics, and statistics are good for the LGBT community, especially LGBT seniors. They really haven't been involved in sharing their information, sharing their statistics, their experiences, because of fear. And so when you see a lack of study on this particular topic, it's because LGBT community hasn't really been comfortable in sharing their experience. And I think that's, there's two very important studies that are going on right now. One that Paula's involved in, and then one with the University of Indiana, Bloomington. And I think we'll get all this information out to people in the follow-up here. But it just goes to show you that we need people to be able to step up and feel comfortable about sharing their story and their experiences, because that comes back to how services and money is allocated. And when the proof is in the pudding with the statistics backed up by the stories that are present, then you have some movement. And if I could just add this for as a kind of a final note, when you're in the midst of caring for somebody that you love, and you don't have that marriage certificate here, it's most likely that two men are going to be asked what their relationship is, whether or not it's a male or a female couple. Most people don't recognize the marriage equality. Everything that happens upon death is transferred at the rite of marriage. And until you've stood in a hospice setting and been told that you don't have legal rights to your care partner at the time of their death, because somebody personal beliefs have gotten in the way, then you understand why these issues are so important and critical as we move forward, because caregiving is the equalizer in all this, because it really comes down to three very simple and kind of corny things: love, care, and commitment. And I certainly understand there's a variety of caregivers out there that are caring for folks that they don't love, or that they have baggage with, family baggage, or whatever that circumstance is. But I just be mindful that at any time, especially at end of life, because we're all going to experience caregiving in one fashion. And the last thing that we need in the midst of care is somebody interfering in the decision-making process that they don't have any right to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, so much for sharing that experience, because it's so important that we talk about it, that we really are compassionate and in all type of, we just cannot apply nonsensical rules to emotional and human experience like it is caregiving.
Right.
So thank you, Chris, so much for sharing. And that's why we're here, because we want to share. We want that you go and talk about. We're making the recordings available on the website. We want that you keep talking and sharing this information with your colleagues, with your friends. That's our mission, our passion. That all those issues are known. So thank you all of you for sharing. And please keep sharing on the chat. We really want to answer your questions. So Scott, please, now is probably a good time for you to let us know what the people are talking on the chat. What can you share with us?
Wow, the comment section has been on fire today, which is outstanding. I love it. I'm doing my best to keep up. So first, everyone, thanks for being here. Donna, Danielle, Ursula, Karen, Pavna. I mean, all your insights and comments are greatly appreciated. So a couple of questions. The children aspect, where younger children are becoming caregivers in their own right. The question is, well, there were kind of two questions. One was more specific to the children's situation. You know, what's the best way to allow the younger children to kind of certainly be involved, but not be so negatively impacted by the stresses and the negative side of it, if you will. Those are my words. And then the other question, more from an organizational standpoint, companies certainly seem more, and I guess they're part of this is because of the laws. There are more benefits geared towards families supporting children than elder care, as an example. So what strategies could be put in play to leverage the children benefits that might be in play more towards caring for, the elderly scenario? If there's any insights on how you can leverage maybe some of those benefits are already in play.
Thank you, Scott. I think, Christy, maybe you can share a little bit about how to support the
Sure.
children, make them aware, but also that they don't get the negativity too much of
Right.
what is
So,
involved.
Scott, I'm so glad this was asked, and thank you for highlighting this. So I will say this: your children see what's going on, and so it's really important to have discussions about what's happening in, of course, age-appropriate language, right? So we're not going to tell a 5-year-old something that's too devastating for them to hear, and yet our 15-year-old, we might be able to have a little bit more concrete information and share it with them. But your kids see what's going on. They feel your energy when you're upset, distressed. And if you don't talk, oftentimes, if you don't share with them what's happening for you, they can misunderstand and think that they've done something or something's going on that they had some part in. So it's important to, as a family unit, have that discussion. Here's what's going on. Here's what's going on with grandma and grandpa, or dad, or whoever you might be caring for. And right now I'm really stressed out, and here are the ways I'm trying to take care of myself. That's a really important piece to share with your kids. What are you doing for self-care too? And letting them know when you need to take time away, it's not because of anything they've done, it's because that's an important thing for you to do as a person and taking care of yourself. You're then showing them how to build their own levels of self-regulation. And so you're showing them this is really, self-care is a really good thing. Let's learn it from childhood, right? And here's what we do to take care of ourselves. So we sort of, I don't want to say normalize, but it's a normal and natural process that we're all going to grow, develop, and eventually we will all die. So we have to, be able to have those conversations at times. So in terms of like the negativity, we don't need to go into deep discussions with a young child about disease process and what's happening, but we can say, this is part of life, that people grow up and they grow older, and then this is what happens. And it's a normal, natural process. And we can kind of look to all kinds of things. We can talk about, remember our pet, our dog, our cat, our rabbit. We can talk about that with younger children. Older children kind of get it. They know this is happening. They know this person lost their grandparent. This person lost their another person in their life. And we try to talk about that. I will say too, having come from the school system, is lean into this. If your child is enrolled in a school system, lean into the school there too and let them know what's happening. Because if there are absences because you have to take your child with you somewhere, or if you're having a hard time even monitoring their school projects or things like that, lean into the school and let them know what's happening for you, because they may be able to add some supports at the school level. So those are some things that I think are really important. In terms of children who are giving care, it's really important to check in with those children. So older children, sometimes caregiving children are not able to even participate in after-school activities that might be important for their later lives, because they have to leave school and go home and take care of grandma because mom works till 6. So what are we doing to check in with them and make sure they're okay? Maybe we need to look at, are there other ways we can support them so that they can have time to have social lives and have extracurricular activities and other kinds of lives that are really growing and learning. So it's just important to pay attention to all those things. It's pretty heavy stuff because caregiving is so expensive, and it's frustrating that we have to have all of this dependent on the family. Unpaid caregivers are taking care of so much. The cost of this is astronomical, and we're not doing enough to take care of our family caregivers, from childhood to taking care of older folks. So that's just that's just my little 2 cents on that, people. So
no, thank you, Christian. And this is that's why we're opening the discussion in these webinars, because it's a topic that affects all of us, and it's a reality, and it's not going to disappear. I mean, Sue was sharing with us last time the statistic of aging population where we're not going to have the ratio that we have family caregivers to older adults. Right now, I think it's 6-1, and in the future, in the near future, it's going to be 3-1.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so it's going to affect every person, every adult.
Yeah.
And then it's important, I think I want to emphasize, Christy, what you said, not
Mm-hmm.
to hide from the children, because they are sensing and they start
Mm-hmm.
making their own conclusions of why mom is upset. Is it
Yes.
something that I did? And that they start making up their own stories.
Yes.
So you don't want to do that. And let's also lean on books. I mean, Christy, you are part of also author, which is a remarkable source of resources, different stories taken from different perspectives, many children, teenager books telling the story why grandma or grandpa are behaving that way or another. So there are plenty of resources that we can share. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
And
and I
then
just I put my website in the chat, but I do have free resources about these topics, and my book also talks about that. But I think this is something that we're talking more and more about, and that's why I'm part of this group. I'm so delighted to be part of this Whole Care Network organization, because we are doing things to make it better for the next people coming along. So it's really important that we keep on doing that.
Thank you, Chris. And the second question, Scott, you mentioned about how can we make sure that all the resources that are already in place for mostly children can be repurposed. And Sue was talking a little bit about that. Sue, do you want to add something else of this trend of probably repurposing already existing infrastructure?
Yes, and I also have a question for Christy. One of the things that is great is that now that we have so many people who have in silos been putting information out, as you've seen in our stream so far, many of us have taken what we're passionate about, and from the fact that we did not have answers and we were seeking them out, that we've created things that we're giving away. There are more and more people now who are, as I'm doing, I'm taking as many different resources as possible to create. And even if we're creating pockets of what they are, is making those things available to other people. And what I'm noticing is that companies who are going in this space, where they will traditionally be very cautious and very selective and protective of their brand and protective of other things, in the caregiving area, they are being very generous with, here are all different kinds of things that can be supporting you. So what I feel good about is that the dynamic of people leaning in to share, where can I share, where can I possibly give them information? There's a term that we had when I was in direct sales, and it was called co-opetition. The term is still there. I just don't use it as much on a daily basis anymore. And it's where we find areas where we are collaborating, where we overlap. Of course, there are some areas where we compete, and yet the higher order of what we're all trying to do is what's the very best for everyone. I see so much of that in the caregiving space, and it fills me, because now, I'll put out links for things, and we've got a podcast, other people have podcasts, people share, here's a podcast. We've all got different voices, and I feel if we continue to do this, it's I've talked about the tsunami in family caregiving, and tsunamis are these huge waves that start deep, deep, deep in the ocean, and they travel for sometimes thousands of miles before anything happens. And so for those of us who are deep in the tsunami of what's going on with caregiving, and we're creating all of these resources, as it starts to bubble up, it helps more people. And as we've talked about, there are more and more of us who are stepping into roles in any different area, whether it's the men, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it is young people, no matter what group you are in, you're still a human who's a caregiver, and all of us, and it's such a beautiful thing. We're sharing so generously to help others. And I feel good about both the solutions that are there and becoming more available, as well as the fact that we are so generously sharing with and for each other, and embracing bringing other insights together so that all boats rise.
Thank you, Sue. And that's a great segue to Daniela. Daniela, please welcome here to our panel today. And you're going to tell us how do we use our organization and open the channel of communication, because it's basically making it more common, a place for everyone. We even hear that when we were doing our white paper and interviewing HR managers, I remember very vividly that one of the responses that resonated was when managers start talking about their own experience. That set the tone for the whole organization to start talking about and open it up. So Danielle, please share with us what is your experience?
Yeah, hey y'all. These stories are so powerful to share. So my name's Danielle Pickens, and I also identify as a sandwich generation caregiver. I have 3 kids under 18 and aging parents with complex needs. And it is very typical in caregiving. I am very sick because I've been exposed to all of the germs. But I think what you can hear from all of these stories is just how diverse and varied these caregiving experiences are, whether it's gender, age, race, income level, geographic proximity. There are so many lenses to look through. And if you take nothing else at all from this, one is just there is no one size fits all organizational policy or caregiver strategy around caregivers, right? This diversity really requires us to think a little bit more deeply and nuanced. So where could you potentially start if you wanted to open these communication channels? What I would say is start with what you already have. You likely in your organizations have various structures. So they might be employee resource groups. They might be employee surveys. You might even look at exit surveys. Why are people leaving? So that you can start to understand, like as we saw from folks in the chat, people might be leaving because there isn't another option potentially for them to work part-time. When I'm working with organizational leaders and HR leaders in organizations, the inflexibility sometimes makes it really challenging. I would also look at, we talked a little bit about these benefit rates, look at how people are utilizing their benefits. So one of the things that you all shared was oftentimes there are more benefits for younger children rather than aging adults. There are some in your employee resource programs and your EAPs that actually do allow individuals to access potentially financial literacy, some legal support. See, are people using them? Because that actually gives you a way to see even this hidden layer that we've been talking about, who might be reaching out. And if you're an HR leader or you're a manager, make sure that your people know about those resources, because it's so important for people to know. Half the time people are like, there are so many benefits, I don't even know what to do. Like we said, a lot of folks don't necessarily label themselves as caregivers, but what are the ways that they're telling you, even without saying it? These are the things I need. These are the reasons why I'm leaving. These are the benefits that I'm using. These are the employee resource groups that I'm joining that can help you start to understand, what does the nature of your caregiving workforce look like? I'm curious, does anyone use those structures currently from folks who are here? Like, what are the structures you all are using? If you want to drop it in chat, or you can.
Yes,
Yeah,
if you could drop it in the chat. We are a little bit running a little
Yeah,
behind.
so fine. Yes, let's drop it in chat if there are particular structures. Oh yeah, see, like there's a policy. Christy took advantage of FEMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, that gives you time off. But oftentimes family leave is unpaid.
Yeah.
So like to this point of financial concerns. So I just think listening to your people, whether it's them actually telling you or seeing how they're acting in your organizations, is going to be a really important way to understand the diversity of your workforce. And I would offer to you that managers are another really key player. And I think other folks in this room are better positioned to speak to that, but managers are a really key player in understanding how caregiving is playing out for folks.
Yes, and thank you for talking about ERG and benefits, because that's exactly the topic we're going to go deep down the next months when we come together. But now you put us right into the next topic, is what role the managers play here. And Zach, you have experience. Please share that with us.
Yeah, thank you. And Danielle, you teed that up beautifully. Yeah, managers have a very important role. I'll keep it short. I could talk about this topic for hours. I have been an employee for a few years. I've been a manager for many years. I've been in HR for many years, and I've been a caregiver since 2007. And I would say the common thread is a manager in my situations, and whether my experience was positive or not. Now, I will say some of it sat on me because I didn't confront my manager. As I said the story earlier, when I did, it didn't go so well. And some of it is on a manager, making sure that the culture and the environment is safe enough for me to bring it up. I will tell you just a couple of statistics, and then I'll give you a quick toolkit, and then I'll stop. But here's some statistics, and this is pretty common. It hasn't really improved. Hopefully, we'll get some improvement. But 56% of the caregivers have informed their manager of their caregiving responsibilities. What that means is if you have a meeting with 10 people in it, typically about 6 of them will have caregiving responsibilities. Only half of those 6 have really come up to you and told you about their caregiver responsibilities. So there's an opportunity to be able to learn more about your employees, especially about their caregiver roles and journeys. There are reasons why maybe your team, your direct reports aren't coming forward. Here's some. 59% said that they perceive they are less committed to their careers because they have shared at their caregivers. So they feel like they're not as important or they're not as committed. 55% said that they were less likely to progress as fast as their peers, get promoted. So maybe there's some fear to talk about your caregiving role. 47% said caregiving affected their work performance. So why would an employee come forward if they think it's going to be negatively viewed, that their performance is going to do well? Managers do not need to be afraid of this, but I can understand why, especially if you haven't had caregiver experience and responsibilities yourself. But here's a quick toolkit. It's corny, but I hope I do it intentionally so you can remember it. You need to pull the Ace of Hearts out of your toolkit. All right, you ready? ACE, A-C-E. A is awareness. Raise your own awareness about caregiving. Again, if you don't have personal experience, there are so many tools. And if you look at our chat, there's many tools that have been shared, podcasts that are out there, lots of material about caregiving. Get familiar with it so you can learn a little bit more about what a caregiver goes through since you have them under your supervision. That's awareness. ACE. C is care or compassion. Show that you care. And there are many ways to do that. There's many ways not to do that. By the most obvious is not doing anything. So just, your head in the sand, hoping that issues will go away. But you can definitely show compassion by mirroring emotion when someone comes to you, whether it's happiness or sadness or depression or concerns or frustration. You can act by helping that person out, even though you may not know exactly how to do it. As Danielle was saying, there are things in your organization, learn about it. Get an HR person, come speak to your team about the benefits. You don't have to be the expert. You just need to be the conductor and help your employees with that. The last one is E. All right, so we have awareness, A, care or compassion for C, and E, empathy. There's a lot of talk about empathy, and I'll just end with this. Empathy is not necessarily just trying to be in somebody else's shoes. It's actually being able to understand their situation and to listen to them. Listen to care and understand. Don't listen to try to solve. Sometimes just listening to somebody sharing their caregiver journey is going to show that you care, and that will build some trust. So you have a great role, managers. I hope you'll take opportunity and do so.
Thank you, Zach. So we will remember ACE. And to finish, Consuela, please tell us, why is this so important? So Consuela is muted. So Christy, maybe you can share a little bit what. Okay, Consuela.
There's Consuela. Yeah.
Couldn't find the mute button there for a second. Look, I want to add, Chrissy has a good point I want her to bring up first, and then I'm going to tail in on what Chrissy is going to share.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Uh-oh, what was my good point? You know what I want to tell you is whatever, look, everybody's going to be a caregiver or be receiving care at some point. That's a great, I'm not going to read the whole quote from Rosalind Carter, but that's really what it comes down to. The thing I wanted to share is I think building an empathetic community in your company is going to be key. So thank you for that, Zach. Any supports you might or accommodations you might dream up or put out there, somebody might be taking advantage of it today, but down the road, others will, and they will see that you have provided that. And I think about it as like, when the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, was passed, buildings had to put ramps into buildings. And a lot of people were like, I can't believe they have to put ramps everywhere. But you know what? We can all use a ramp. Even if we don't need a wheelchair or have other mobility limitations, we can all take advantage of a ramp. And that's what you're doing. You're building some ramps. And somebody's going to use it today, and maybe they won't use it forever, but you've put that in place.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy.
And just to add on to that, we had conversations about this earlier, is that in this whole culture of your organization, as you're embracing the support network you're trying to build, is that everyone's watching. So what you're doing for one, it gives hope to the other one, because everybody's going to get on this caregiving wheel eventually. It's going to intersect our lives at one point. And what great respect and honor and really, and peace of mind you give to your loyal employees as they're looking from the outside in, as you're supporting this one. And then their turn comes, then you can lower their anxiety, because they know that they're going to be able to count on their organization to be there for them, to help them through the crisis. And I think about that network of community that you build between one another in supporting each other without the company having to build in rules. I think the employees themselves will band together and help fill in some of the gaps for different positions, as we know that we're all in here in this thing together called caregiving, and that what you're doing for them is going to benefit me, and it's going to be vice versa. And it's going to be a big thing, a good thing for the employee and the employers in the long run.
So well said, Consuela and Christy, and all of you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we're running a little bit over time, but we had such a great discussion. And just to leave with all these positive notes, that building an empathetic organization is a win-win. You create loyalty, energy in your employees, and you get all the gains, and it's just making a better world for everyone. So let's go and build this empathetic organization where we're all going to thrive. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month at the same time. And please keep the conversation. Let's get connected, and thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And the recordings are going to be on the website, on the Whole Care Network website, where the previous recordings from our sessions are. Thank you so much.
This is
for a
great.
wonderful day.
Great,
Thank you.
great meeting you all. I didn't get to really speak, but hopefully next time, because I have
Thank
some
you.
ideas also.
Thank you, Donna. Looking forward to that. Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.